are like white on
Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 148th Right and Left Discussion Forum. We hold our televised discussions twice monthly to demonstrate the value of civil, productive, open-minded political dialogue. 2 weeks ago, we discussed the upcoming 2020 presidential campaigns. Our panel weighed in on the issues that they thought would be prominent in the campaigns and the ones they thought should be prominent. As it turned out, there were more issues than our half-hour broadcast allowed. Excuse me. So we'll pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago. Our panel, beginning on my left, is Tom Finley, who's currently in his third career as co-founder of Great Lakes Resource Center. On his left is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired senior research chemist. And on his left is Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. On his left is Patty Haskins, member of the Wadsworth City Council. Tom, 2 weeks ago you said you thought that global warming and immigration would be two hot topics for the 2020 campaigns. You still feel that way?
No.
Oh, good.
I don't think they are hot topics. I think there is one that's higher priority. And if you remember, I said what would be irrevocable as the criteria that we just couldn't repair if something occurred. So in reflecting on that, where I came was that the number one issue facing us is government reform. And I looked at three areas just as examples in that. One was the terms of office need to be re-examined. Number two, the accountability for action. And I'm suggesting something like every quarter there's a State of the Union based upon the actions, reporting the actions, the laws passed by, in a bipartisan way using consensus as the way to get there.
Excuse me, is this a topic you think should be or will be?
Should be, number one, government reform. And these are two examples. And the third one that I would suggest as part of this government reform also would be centered around
It's the next page after this one.
yes, the next page after this one. There it is. Thank you, John. Is the funding of campaigns. I think we should be moving towards only funding being taxpayer monies, and that would mean we would have to define the distribution of that money to the parties and a way to funnel it to those independent candidates. So that's a brief look at what I think the next issue is.
I'd be interested in comments about the government funding. Patty, you're a politician. You have to fund your own campaigns. Do you think the City of Wadsworth should fund it for you?
On that scale, probably no, although it is expensive to run for office.
Okay, take it to the national level then.
To the national level, yes, I definitely think there needs to be campaign reform. Because right now, you know, the way money comes into the candidates, whether it's legal or illegal, the amounts that millionaires and billionaires, I should say, can donate to one campaign, which gives them a definite advantage in running. You can't have a Harry Truman again run for president because he just wouldn't have enough money. I think there needs to be more parity to make sure that we have not just rich candidates and candidates with good friends, but that you have quality candidates that are running.
Can you imagine what kind of chaos would result if you told billionaires you can't contribute to political campaigns?
In other words, they couldn't lobby and then influence the results of the election?
They couldn't find a way around it. I mean,
George Soros would be out of business.
We'd have to have a
as with the Koch brothers and Edelstein and all of them.
Both sides have their
yes.
You know, it doesn't stop there because the efforts of the congressmen, once they're in place, a huge amount of their time is expected to be devoted to collecting funds.
And it's required. I've heard
so
where
we lose.
they have to they are required to spend so many hours a day on the phone requesting money. Like in Congress, where it's a 2-year term, starting the day after they win.
There you are.
So they're not working on legislation. They're
Required
working
as a practical matter or by
by the
statute?
party.
By the
They are
party.
required to do that. They set
Really?
up phone banks for them, and you go in there and you call.
Oh, party politics is wonderful. Ron, what do you think? What's going to be the hot topic?
That's very important, Tom. I agree with that. I don't know you, but I'm feeling pretty overwhelmed. There's so darn many things.
Yeah.
You know, I talked last time. Global warming was one big thing. Gun reform was another.
I liked what you said about global warming. What we need is an honest, civil, science-based discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. There's so much of everything that gets into the sort of the popular mind that gets distorted one way or the other.
Right.
One thing that's I think is really going to be important too is immigration. I was reading some comment the other day, and someone kind of analyzing all this, and some of the things we're concerned about now has started long before the Trump administration. Some of the cages were built under the Obama administration. Some of those kinds of supposedly to be temporary enclosures for folks. So it's a broader based problem than just a Trump dump situation,
Oh, yes.
you know, although he's not helping. So, but the other big thing for me, I think, is going to be health care. Health reform. And I'd like to see a science-based and a financial-based talk about this without the Republicans saying socialism and the Democrats saying profit motive is bad kind of thing. But whether it's going to be universal health care, I mean, I've been on Medicare for almost 20 years, and it works okay. I have to buy a supplement. And to some extent, competition has helped there. A couple of years ago, I went from one plan to another because I saved $100 a month. So there's some competition out there. Yeah. And even in the medical field, supposedly competition should be a good thing. So I've always heard. Gets prices down, but doesn't seem to happen so much in the medical field.
You know, and I heard that discussion on television this morning, and the thing that occurred to me, it's one thing for me to go shop for an automobile and find out one costs $35,000, the other costs $33,000. I can get that.
Sure.
I have no idea how to shop for health care.
And do you always have the time to shop?
I went to the dentist recently, paid $350 for a filling. Now, there's got to be cheaper ones, but am I going to take the time to call all the dentists and say, hey, can you tell me how much is going to cost? Well, they won't do that.
I got a friend in Arizona that goes to Mexico for dental treatment. Bryan, what's your thinking on this topic?
I've never heard that one before. That's good. You know, as I've thought about this, you know, immigration is obviously, you know, front and center. Along the lines of government reform, I think we need a little social media and media reform, because a lot of the problems that I see or gets brought to the attention of the public have existed for quite some time, except the white hot light of the media is now spotlighting the issues that we have with our immigration system. They were, as far as I was concerned, you know, deaf and dumb, you know, over 8 years when all this was going on. Nobody talked about children in cages. Nobody even knew that there were these large holding facilities, you know, in Arizona and Texas. No one even cared to know what was going on. And now all of a sudden, because the current person that sits in the Oval Office isn't the person they think, now we've got all these problems with immigration. Well, we could have solved those problems 15, 18 years ago. You know, they're talking, the latest thing is the internment camp that's somewhere up in North Dakota or something that housed Japanese, you know, that they interred Japanese. The rumor is that that's going to be opened again, and that they're going to put children up there, and the horrific pictures and all. Yeah, that's that's the latest social media, you know, viral thing is that, you know, the terrible administration. And it goes right on down the line. So I think there's a disservice that's happening to the overall public. And if you want to get people that are educated to vote and educated about issues, there needs to be some pretty good sources that people can go to. So I think immigration is going to be an issue. I think when you look at campaign finance reform, obviously there's some things that can be done there. And it's a problem that both sides have. And we have to take the politics out of it and say on a national level, maybe we look at limits, maybe we extend the limits of a congressman instead of 2 years, make it 4 years, make a senator 8 years, but then term them out, and this goes for both sides. I mean, there's no reason why people
I believe in term limits.
Yeah, people that can be in their 32 years or run consecutively. Let's term them out after a certain period of time, and that actually helps the parties develop a base, a bench, and people that can come up. Right now, there is no incentive to run against an incumbent. There's none whatsoever because all the money flows to them, and it happens on our friends on the other side of the aisle, and it happens on our side of the aisle. There's no incentive.
Does it bother you that term limits would cause some really good legislators to have to leave?
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't bother you?
Doesn't bother me at all because it was
Oxymoron.
never intended. It was never intended when the founders looked at and set up the government. It was never intended for people to make it a career. These were people that would go to Washington, they would get the business of the country done, and then they would go back. Now, obviously,
Back to the farm.
we've got a larger government that needs more. But when you look at the schedule, and obviously the Senate's on vacation, the House is on vacation, they're doing this, they're going all these places. I think they could really, if they wanted to really work and focus on the business of the country, they can get that done. And I don't have a problem with we've got a great senator, we got to keep him in there. Tough luck.
Patty, you were nodding your head at the idea of it would be bad to get rid of good legislators.
Yeah, if you have somebody in there that is effective, and there's something to be said about experience, coming from the person who's been in office for 4 terms and is running for her 5th in November. Yes.
Will you name that person?
Well, so that right there is I'm the only one. So, but yeah, I agree. I think you lose some of the experience. There's got to be a happy medium. What that particularly is, I don't know. When you asked this question before, there are so many different issues that are out there, and it depends upon who you talk to. I mean, Kamala Harris just came out with a plan where she wants to increase the pay of teachers by, I think it was $11,000 or $14,000 a year.
AFC, what's that?
I didn't.
I'm sorry. I missed
pay
it.
of teachers.
Okay.
Teachers pay by a certain amount. She's also come out with a plan that would provide for retirement systems and go back to having retirement systems. It depends upon who you're talking to. Do those subjects appeal to everybody? No, but to some people, those are extremely important. Immigration may be an issue to one person and not an issue to the other, just as climate change might be for one person and the other person doesn't believe in it, so it's not an issue. I think because we are so far out, however, we don't really know what the issues are going to be come election time. Something could occur, or something on the international level could occur right before the election, and that will be maybe the biggest factor in how people vote. One slip by one candidate can make all the difference in the world. Just yesterday we had President Obama that was saying that he still doesn't think it's wrong if you get aid from or get information from foreign nationals, which is illegal. But he thinks it's okay and you don't have to report it to the FBI.
No, you said Obama. Did you mean Trump?
I meant Trump. Did I say Obama?
Yes, you did.
Freudian slip, maybe.
We're going to find that out sooner or later.
But and that to me, I remember that when we first discussed the election, in 2016 before the election, and it came out that there was some Russian influence going on and some of the bots that were out there and so forth. And I was very concerned about that. I was really upset that we had a foreign national a country that we are not in line with, that was affecting the election or was at least trying to influence that election. And here we could very easily have it happen again. And there could be something that occurs in the election process over the next year and a half that could cause people to really, sit up and say, hey, no, I'm not going to go along with this anymore. So it's really hard. It'd be nice to have a crystal ball and say what the issue is going to be at the last minute.
How do you feel about the United States Congress taking up so much time and energy and wealth investigating each other?
Well, it's a perfect example of an unbridled Congress, no leadership. It was going through my mind, who should be setting these issues for elections? The parties or the citizens? And is there any way in which that should be occurring?
I just saw on television recently, I forget which station it was, and the gentleman was in Michigan and was going to Detroit and Flint and some of the cities there and saying, what do you want to hear from the candidates? And the gentleman said, I don't want them to tell me what they're going to do. I want them to listen to me and what the issues are in this community, and then they can tell me how to replace, this empty factory, how to provide jobs, and so forth. And they need to listen to the people.
One of the things that bothers me is that we, we have almost no discussion anymore about the opioid epidemic. And we are losing almost as many people every year as we lost in Vietnam. I mean, there's 47,000 last year, and we lost a little over 50,000 in Vietnam. And the thing that troubles me about that is something that Jerry Ritzman pointed out when we discussed the opioid epidemic, that it was almost entirely caused by the federal government, the FDA, by declaring that opioids were not addictive, and that there was a series on 60 Minutes where a man by the name of Ed Thompson, who had spent decades as a manufacturer producing opioids for Big Pharma, and that he was talking about how in 2001 the pressure from the drug manufacturers and the federal government redefined what Oxycontin and other opioids would do. He said Oxycontin was first approved in 1995. It was based on science that only showed it's safe and effective when used short term. But in 2001, pressured by Big Pharma and pain sufferers, the FDA made a fateful decision, and with no new science to back it up, expanded the use of Oxycontin to just about anyone with chronic ailments like arthritis and back pain. Today, the label, which almost nobody reads, says that the powerful pills are effective for daily, round-the-clock, long-term treatment. That label made a huge change. We went from having less than one overdose death per year to over 26 in that period of time.
The sad part is,
but that should be a topic.
It should be.
If 47,000 lives is not worthy.
But some people, if it does not affect them or their family, they do not discuss that issue. It does not become paramount for them, and that's the unfortunate part. And and along with that, just the whole pharmaceutical industry needs to be reformed.
Well, that's part of the bigger issue of health care and its cost.
Yes.
It's just one of the factors that runs cost way up, and that is the money spent for research, for instance, all has to be, regardless of whether it's accurate or not, shown in the cost to retrieve that. Well, what if, as a taxpayer, we were contributing to that?
And that's one
research.
of the concerns, though, with when you have a Medicare for all,
Yeah.
is that the research that is done on drugs, in new types of medicines and new types of procedures is done in the private sector. And if healthcare is nationalized, then where is that creativity coming from? And this is from someone who really believes in some type of universal health care. But you do have to look at that creativity side and the research side, which could be stifled if we go to that
I
route.
think we've sort of talked a little bit about this in past programs, but it was like in the 90th percentile of the research and development comes out of the United States. And the countries that have the universal care, the Finlands, the Denmarks, the Scandinavian countries, they don't want us to go to their model, because in their model there isn't any creativity coming out of it. There is no incentive to try anything new or innovate or anything like that. When people talk about, you know, the Canadian healthcare system, and you were mentioning about your friend goes to Mexico for his dental work, I think some price disclosure and some transparency needs to be put in place. I'm not sure that I want to shop and do LASIK for $2.99 an eye. I'm not sure I'm going to go that route if that day ever comes, but I want to pick a good doctor that's trained and has plenty of experience, and then, you know, do you really shop her? Do you really dick her on price if you're laying there and you've had a heart attack? No, you want to go to the best hospital. I haven't ever heard of anybody that has suffered a heart attack and said, you know what, I'm willing to save $3,000.
Check out the.
Send me over here. You know, no, they want to go to the Cleveland Clinic, and they want the best heart surgeon in the country to work on that guy. And I think that's what I would want. Wouldn't you?
Unfortunately, though, right now, unless you have the right health care insurance, you can't go to the Cleveland Clinic. You can't. You are forced.
Well, the clinic is part of, you know, there are really only 2 plans right now that are out there that are viable. I was doing some research for a client of mine that has to make a pick, and you've got the Cleveland Clinic with the Oscar program, and then you've got university hospitals. Maybe this is a little too specific, but there's really only 2, you know, viable organizations that are providing that health care. Now, obviously, you do have your SUMAs and all that kind of stuff for some of the other plans, but that's what Obamacare has done. You know, that's why we have all this consolidation in healthcare and hospitals, because, you know, that's what the policy, that was the sort of, you could call it the unintended consequence of this policy.
Every time I go to my podiatrist, he's got another sign on the wall, we're no longer taking thus and thus and thus.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you go about getting some of these? I mean, the 47,000 people dying of drug overdoses. How do you get that for the front and center? In the
Well, I don't know
campaign?
where it starts, but when my wife had her hip replacement, and she's leaving the hospital, they gave her 100 OxyContin.
Yeah.
100.
I'm surprised that is still going on.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of
That's
the
the 3
biggest
years
reforms
ago,
that's
yeah.
needed is the
Yeah.
disbursement of those drugs, and perhaps using, I mean, what did we use before those drugs for pain?
Aspirin.
And, you know, and how do we handle that? Looking for other ways to handle the situation. Also to convince people that sometimes you do have to deal with a little bit of pain just to get through something. But
Well, I'll tell you from experience, I had both my hips done in 1 week, and I had a 30-day supply of the generic, I can't remember what they called it, maybe it was Oxy something or other, Oxy Light, but you know, they didn't want me to come off of that because of the pain and, you know, the pain management of the thing. All of a sudden you start worrying about walking because, you know, you get this stabbing pain, you know, coming on both
and you
your
do
hips.
heal better and quicker
When-
when you're not in pain.
When you're
So,
not in pain. So, you know,
yeah.
every 5 hours, I made sure I took that pill. Now, I believe that there are people out there that have they're predisposed to addiction, and
Well,
so
that's true.
they you know, they go on it and they never come off of it. But you know, I wanted to drive, so I couldn't drive with taking that.
When did you have this done?
8 years ago, I had both my hips replaced. Yeah, yeah, at the Cleveland Clinic.
One other issue that I'd like to see discussed with Ron's criteria, open, honest, scientific, and civil, is marginalization. That there are a lot of candidates that are talking about various groups being marginalized or discriminated against one way or another. The question is that really still going on in this country?
Yes.
It is. Tell me how.
Well, racism still exists.
In what way does that, I mean, there are people that don't like other people because of their nationality or color or something. How does that affect their opportunities in life?
They may not get that job that they want because of the color of their skin or because of their religion. I mean, I hear
That's illegal.
it's illegal, but it's done, and it's still done.
How do you know that?
Because
You
they're-
just accept that on faith, don't you?
I accept a lot of things on faith. I hear, I don't know that it's true, but I hear about all of the attacks on, the Christians are marginalized and they are not treated fairly. I think women still have a glass ceiling to break through and are marginalized. And, people feel that way. They respect the opinion of the male over the opinion of the female. May not even realize that they're doing it, but it becomes automatic.
Would you be in favor of the Chamberlin format and have an honest, open, scientific discussion about this with real data?
Absolutely, yes.
I think we're overdue for that.
Yes.
Myself.
Is that government, John?
Pardon me?
Is that a government
Is that a government
issue?
Yes, I think it is. Ever since we have a whole civil rights movement about that.
Well, that was because nothing was being done.
I know we have laws are on the books all over the country that outlaw the kind of thing we're talking about.
Well,
And
part of the
Patty
civil-
is saying people are breaking the law without consequences.
Right. Well, and part of the Civil Rights Act was taken back because supposedly
I'm just
everything was cleared
Being
up.
devil's
But
advocate, but
that's not true. But
I'm just thinking of the role of religion in this country. And
Well,
Less than it used to be.
um,
Listening to a program last night, the Southern Baptist Church convention is going on right now, and they're arguing right now, hot and heavy, about whether they should ordain women.
really.
And it's a religious issue, but is it a civil rights issue as well? And
Well,
you know.
we'll discuss that some other time.
Absolutely.
The clock has run out on us. Thank you very much.